I was the first American reporter to speak with Iran's Ayatollah Khomeini. He rarely even looked at me, but I did manage to catch his eye after citing a rather inflammatory quote about him.
Imam, President Sadat of Egypt, a devoutly religious man, a Muslim, says that what you are doing now is, quote, a disgrace to Islam. And he calls you, Imam, forgive me, his words, not mine, a lunatic. I know that you have heard that comment.
We're talking with Mike Wallace, veteran newsman of CBS, 60 Minutes. You know the show, you know the man, and he's telling us about his life story. And Mike, you were explaining how you went through a very absorbed period in your life, with work being the focus. Now, I know you've written that one of the turning points was when, very sadly, your son died. And he was, 20-something, 22 or so. You were in your mid-40s. How did you cope with that kind of thing in the middle of all the other stuff you were doing?
Well, prior to becoming a reporter, when I graduated from the University of Michigan, all I wanted to do was be a radio announcer. Rip and read news, but I wasn't a reporter. When I got into the Navy, and I served in the Navy as a communications officer in the Second World War, I began to travel and learn a little bit about the world. And I said to myself, hey, come on, you want to do something more useful, more important, more satisfying, more fulfilling than reading commercials or whatever. And so I decided that I would try to be a reporter. And it took a little time to catch on, local, eventually to the network. And then when Peter, who was in Greece, and he went to visit a monastery in which 3 nuns were said to live. He climbed up, and all of a sudden I only found this out later, didn't hear from him. And he, every week or two we would hear, didn't hear. Finally went over there and found him. He had fallen from a cliff, looking out on the Gulf of Corinth in Greece. And I found him and recognized him only because of the clothes that he had on. And I figured, you used to say that you did some of the second-rate things that you were doing because you had to make a living. I figured, I'll dedicate the rest of my professional life to the memory of Peter and try to make him up there proud. And that is when I left everything else that I was doing, started exclusively reporting, took a big cut in salary, and have been grateful to Peter ever since, because he was the motive force that made me change my mind about my life, my professional life particularly.
And how has it made you look upon the rest of the world? Because of course you've covered tragedies, you've covered conflicts and everything else. How does it shape your view on the tragedies you see in other people's lives elsewhere?
You know something, Riz, there are tragedies, I don't know about you, but there are tragedies in everybody's life that are unannounced. Not a lot of attention is paid. No one has ever really seriously considered me as a compassionate reporter, but I understand compassion and hope that I honor a certain compassion. That doesn't mean to be let down your standards or go easy on somebody criminal or things of that nature. But understand that there are motives in people's lives which need to be plumbed before you say nasty things about them.
If you were to pick a couple of defining moments in the work you've done, and it's a long career, we could go on forever about that, but if you had to pick a couple of defining moments, what would they be?
Have you ever been sued for libel?
Not yet.
Well, we did a story about General William Westmoreland, who was the Supreme Commander in Vietnam. And we learned, and little by little put together and suffered for a piece we did called The Uncounted Enemy of Vietnam Deception. So he sued us, and of course in effect we won. He withdrew the suit. But that was the business of being sued for libel, and you begin to look at yourself, I mean, when you're called as a reporter, thief, fraud, cheat, etc. And they have the right in a libel trial to go after you in any way that they can, and the lawyers for the plaintiff will do that.
On the positive side? On the positive side, anything you recall being a real highlight?
Well, when you right a wrong, it's astonishing. When you right a wrong and you have the opportunity to tell the American people or the rest of the people who watch 60 Minutes that what they have been led to believe, perfect example, a judge down in Mississippi, segregated, racist, etc. And he was called all of these things. And Judge Pickering, whom I saw, as a matter of fact, a couple of days ago, was none of those things. He was not a racist. It became apparent to everybody, little by little, that black people trusted him down in Mississippi, that he was a good judge. When you do that kind of thing, it is so satisfying to you as a reporter, as an individual, and to be able to show America, hey. And that is why it's important to sources, confidential sources, are so important because, and they will be kept confidential when I promise that they will be kept confidential, because you need them to tell the truth about things that for which they would be punished for telling the truth if they were known to have leaked the story to a reporter.
Now, on your walls of your office, Mike, there are pictures of you with Vladimir Putin, with Radovan Karadzic, Yasser Arafat. You've met the international community, world leaders and so on. You come back to the USA. There isn't a lot of international news here. The majority of American people don't really know what's out there. As someone who informs the American people, how do you regard the lack of international information the community here has?
You believe that?
The majority of people I come across don't really have, you know, a great access to international news on the domestic networks and so on.
Well, that's true. There is, that is true to a certain degree anyway. You read the New York Times, you get it. You read the Washington Post, you get it.
They're not the best-selling papers, though, ironically. The ones
Yes,
that are.
yes. We are, to a certain degree, selfishly insulated against or isolated from foreign news, unless the Jewish community is fascinated by Israel. The Greek community is fascinated by the Egyptian community, the Irish community.
But overall, I mean, this is maybe a lot of people say this is the reason that the American people are easily led by government into sticky situations, you know, the Vietnams and the Iraq wars and so on, because they aren't fully informed. Then it all comes out as a mess afterwards. I mean, if you were to compare the Vietnam War and the Iraq War, first or second, how would you compare the two in terms of the way the information is managed, the way people in America see it?
We should never have gone into Iraq, in my estimation. I'm not supposed to say it. The planning for it was insufficient. The number of troops available to do the job, insufficient. Some of our civil liberties, which have been infringed on wrongly, As I say, I'm not supposed to say it because, but what the hell? I'm 87 years old. What are they going to do? Fire me?
What will be your legacy, Mike? What do you want people to think of you as once?
I was once asked that by a young reporter, and I said, well, I'd like my epitaph to say, tough but fair. And you know something? It remains that. Tough but fair. In other words, skeptical but not cynical. Accurate. Fresh eyes.
And you still see something fresh in it every day.
Yes.
Mike, we wish you luck with that, and hope you keep asking those tough but fair questions.
Thank you, Riz.
Thank you, sir.